Hello everyone. Once again, as every time, my name is Paul Selinch, and I'm here to help you with a how to start up course. And yeah, once more, I know I reminded before I started recording this, but if you want to, you can turn on the cameras, as we would be really pleased to see your faces and to see your reactions. It also helps the mentors that are speaking here during these sessions, so that they know they are not talking to blank sort of names and spaces, but actual human beings. And yeah, apart from that, I'd like to say that, yeah, slowly but surely, we are coming to the end of this. This is already our 5th session, and next week, well, we are gonna have our final one. So I hope you are excited about that, as I'm also happy to see that so many of you have gotten this far, and I'm even more excited to see you at the pitch competition. I know that to some of you, I still haven't sent back the pitch decks with the comments. I am utterly sorry about that. It is going to happen in the upcoming days. Yeah, so you will still have enough time to revise them and perfect them for the 25th of October. So, but more information on that is gonna follow. Probably during this week, I'm going to let you know what kind of prizes might there be and what are the technical aspects regarding the pitch competition. So apart from that, as I mentioned, we are already at the 5th session today. And yeah, this one, well, we are going to look more at the legal side of things here. And to help us with that, we have Arta Abāšina as the mentor joining us. And Arta has led much of her work life in the UK, Spain, and New Zealand. After returning to Latvia, she entered the startup world and joined a venture capital fund, Overkill Ventures. Since Overkill, Arta has taken on the role of head of operations at the Latvian fintech startup, Nordigen. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor over to Arta.
Thank you, Pauls. Hello, everyone. I just saw myself and it's quite disturbing, but I'm going to share the screen so I wouldn't have to look at myself at all times. So see my hopefully lovely presentation. So, all right. I think I have it up. Pauls, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, lovely. So, yes, I will be covering the practical, legal, operational side of how to start it. Yeah, just give me a second. So yeah, this is the overall agenda of today, what I'm going to be covering. So some very practical steps. I've split them actually in levels, so you see in presentations. So steps you have to pass through to have a fully fledged startup, and some things you have to take into account when you actually do start working. And as with many of these things, it's better to start them early and think about them already now before everything is on fire and yeah, you just have fully jumped into the startup adventure. There's one thing I want to try today. I use this at Nordigen, the company I work at all the time. So it's Slido, it's similar to Kahoot. Menti, you might have tried this already, but it's basically an online questionnaire to get you a little bit involved in what we do here. There's also going to be a quiz and a Q&A part at the end. So if you go to slido.com and use how to start up, so HTS hashtag, you'll be able to join our quiz today. So we'll start up with a couple simple questions just to get the sense of what Slido is. You can always also use the QR code to just get there straight away. At the moment, you only see the Q&A part, so the chance to ask questions. You can ask them during the presentation, just on the platform. I'll look at them only at the end, and if I have covered it already, I'll just click done. But if not just yet, then I'll answer it at the end. Yeah, so either ask questions now or as we go, or at the end. They're anonymous, or you can mention your name as well if you wish. I do not mind. Yeah, so let's try it out. Let's see how many you actually have clicked on it. Do you get what this thing is? And if you are not active participants, I'll just be skipping these questions. So yeah, the basic idea, this is the simple questions I mentioned. How is your October? Word cloud, so it should be appearing as we speak, but it didn't. Oh, there we go. We have a couple of questions, a couple answers here. It is fairly cold. If I'm honest with you, I didn't have heating for 1.5 months. Nor hot water as well, my flat. So it's been a great adventure coming into the October. But okay, glad to see you're all in good spirits and already, well, apart from one person, unfortunately, but getting the idea of polls. So keep your phone handy. You can use both your phone and laptop. And I'm gonna have a couple of these as we go, not too many, but still just to liven up the conversation as we go. And one more here, just concerning last week's big thing, a little was opening in Latvia. Yeah, how are you all feeling about this? I completely agree, but we did have a very good laugh about it at work, where people were sharing different other companies actually joining the banana craze. And yesterday I was in Jelgava and I saw the crazy queue that's taking place. So yeah, interesting times going on in Latvia. Right, to the very official part, serious items. So I start with myself. Just thank you, Pals, already for doing a quick introduction, but just to give a bit bigger overview. So what I've done since I actually returned from abroad. So I lived abroad for a while, had a blast, but I decided it's time to come back to Latvia, where I'm originally from. So yeah, last couple of years I've been in the startup world, and I started off at the other side of the table where I'm now. I'm now at a startup called Nordigen. Before that, I was at a VC fund and I was investing in startups. I talked with many companies. You heard Diana last time, and she actually was my colleague, where we both started working together. And yeah, I decided to head into the startup world and join Nordigen as head of operations. And that's why I'm here today, telling you all the operations from the startup point of view and operations, but I've also seen at Overkill, because I helped many startups kick off their first everything, first journeys, first employees, first registrations, all the steps that you do when you meet an investor, when you actually start an actual proper working company. And yeah, on the sidelines, I'm part of a youth organization. It's a global massive organization, which is around, I think, 14,000 members now. So Global Shapers Riga do a lot of interesting projects there. One of them being financial literacy awareness. Basically, we're helping youth and young people gain more knowledge about finance and investment, savings, pension plans, etc. And yeah, today I also want to mention a little bit what is Nordigen. Nordigen is a Latvian startup, but actually I want to ask you before that. So what do you think Nordigen is? And before I tell you what it is actually, so the quiz is, this is where we start off the quiz. I think there are 4 or 5 questions altogether. Some of you might know answers to these. Some of you might not know them at all. That is fine. I'll be very straightforward with you. I don't have any awards just yet. But if I get the chance to participate in your pitch competition, then I might give a plus point to the person or team who knew the correct answer. So not nepotism at all, but just encouraging you to join the quiz, find out more things, and yeah, actively participate in this meetup. Yeah, so the first question will be about Nordigen. We'll have a timer. I think it's around 15 seconds. And the one who answers the fastest obviously gets the most points. And yeah, if you have participated in any quizzes before, very straightforward system. All right, with no further ado, if you are joining, you have 15 seconds still to write your name. And here we go. So what does Nordigen do? Some of you already mentioned or managed to Google what we do. And the funny thing is that many people actually don't know what we do even after Googling. So Nordigen used to do some things a while ago, and now we have switched to a new direction. So all of them are fairly true, but actually the correct answer is open banking. So banking service is more something but regular-wise, and anyone who actually has money coming in and out of their accounts because of their services do. So we do open banking. I'll tell you a bit more what is a bit later, but the rest of the things are not our thing. We just help to power them. But Nordigen is an open banking, free open banking, actually. That is what we do. see a question in the chat. I'm not sure whether to answer it now. If it is relevant, please do say that.
Oh, the question is, what was Slido code? So I think it's hashtag HTS, right?
Yes. So it's slido.com, HTS, or slide.do, hashtag HTS. All right. Yes. So Nordigen is the world's first premium open banking platform. Doesn't mean much for people who don't know what open banking is. That's basically something that European Union initiated, and also other countries have come to follow. It's basically anonymized way for banks to share data. So individuals and organizations are more in control of who uses their data, how it's used, and help many developers and companies build new amazing products. So if you're making a fintech product at the moment, open banking is something you should definitely be looking into. It's heading into open finance. Not going to get into that, but very interesting sphere, many interesting innovations, and truly interesting way of working. And how we make money is basically we build many APIs. So these connections between banks and accounts, we have made many at the moment. And many of the companies and individuals are just interested of accessing banking data through that. And the more they use it, the more raw data they get. And if you have ever worked with data, you know that raw data is messy data. You oftentimes don't know what it means. You can't use it. Well, that's where our premium products come in. And that's how we monetize Nordigen, how we earn money, and how we have raised a lot of money within the investment sector as well. So yeah, that's very briefly what Nordigen is, but you're all here to actually hear about companies and how to make companies work, how all the practical elements work. So this is where we reach level 1 of registering a company. So I know that some of you already have done this before, and some of you already have a company. So this is just a refresher or just my point of view how to do this. As with any Latvian law or bureaucratic elements, there's quite a lot of like room and space for interpretation, and that depending on who you work with, it can differ, but these are the general outlines. And yeah, if your experience is a bit different, it's just because it can be so oftentimes. Yeah, so I hope that all of you know at least the general outline of Latvian company types. So SIA, or LL limited liability company, and then a similar one with reduced equity. I'll talk about it in a bit more detail, how they differ, but these are the most common types and some of the ones that you would actually use when establishing your startup. Then there's stop company, or akcijas as known in Latvian, and sole trader, or individualized komersants, individual trader as well. So before I head into each of the types, it's important to understand what is share capital. So whenever you open a company, at least most of these companies types, you'll be asked to pay in some money. And I've seen a lot of startups be actually very worried. So do I have to lose 2,800 euros? But actually, that's not true. It's just the money to show that you are basically ready to open your company, ready to commence the business, and you invest them in your own business account. So it stays with the company. You don't spend it. I've seen startups who are low on cash just open a different sort of LLC, or ask money from their friends, or just you can get that amount in order to open it. But it's important to stress that it stays within the company. And yeah, to head into the actual types of companies that we have, the most common ones. So SIA, or LLC that I mentioned already. So this is the one where you can have more than one owner. There has to be at least one. It has to be, it can be a legal or a natural person. And this is the one where share capital is a minimum 2,800 euros. It can be anything above that, but that's the minimum. So basically the amount of money you have to pay in to open a proper SIA. And yeah, you're not all liable with your own property. So it means if anything happens, you don't have to repay, in case of bankruptcy, for example, you don't have to repay the lost amount. So the fee for registration in general is 150 euros, but depending on lots of different elements, this number can be also bigger. And then there's a very similar type of company, just with reduced equity. This was created in order to get more people into entrepreneurship. So normally we need from €1 up to 2,800. So anywhere between that. However, yesterday there was a company that was registered with 1 cent. Not entirely sure how that went through and how did that happen, but this is just much smaller investment in initial phases, but obviously has some limitations. For example, you can have less owners. So if you're getting investment early on, this will get tricky straight away. You should just transform it into the proper SIA without the reduced equity, with the full equity, 2,800, as I mentioned before. A legal person cannot be an owner, so it has to be a natural owner. But at the same time, as with previous LLC, you're not liable for your own property, and it's cheaper to open it actually than the proper fully fledged SIA. Then another limitation I would like to mention is that annual turnover cannot be over 40,000. So if you're planning to have any type of business over and where annual turnover is over 40,000, you should open a proper SIA or different sort of company. And I've heard this one before, and I want to stress that micro enterprise, or the mikras as they're known in Latvia, there's not the same thing. And I'm not going to get into mikras because there's a lot of changes this year. And you probably, if you're actually opening a startup and going into the startup world, investments and other sort of elements, you'll be not looking at micro enterprises. In a dream world, you'll be also looking at joint stock company or akciju sabiedrība, and it's called different ways in Latvia, but it's basically where you're publicly listed. And hopefully that happens to you one day, but generally this is much more expensive to open. So you need at least 35,000 share capital. A legal person may be an owner of this one, and you need at least 350 euros as a fee for registration. We have a couple of big SIAs in Latvia, and ultimately a lot of companies do become joint stock companies, but it happens a bit later in their work life. And obviously individual merchant, as you can see, there's some limitations to that. So a legal person cannot be the owner, only one natural person can be the owner. So again, if you are a couple of co-founders or you're looking to raise money soon, this will not be your company. It's very easy to open that. It doesn't require any share capital. However, you are liable with your own property. So if you go into bankruptcy, if something happens, you would potentially need to pay for that as well. And then the fee for registration is fairly cheap, but you have to look at annual turnover. So whether you would comply with these things. The thing here is that you have to register an individual merchant if your annual turnover is above 284,600 or above the 28,000, you have at least 5 employees. You don't always have to register when you do business, but as we're today talking about startups, you will have to register, and you'll be using one of those company types. So the next quiz question. So that's going to be about the four different company types that I mentioned. And I hope that I can just press go and that everyone has found the hashtag. So again, hashtag HTS, and we had a lot of people's names basically. So I mentioned a lot of different types and LLC. That includes both the LLC with reduced and LLC with the fully fledged company type. Micro enterprise, joint stock merchant, or akciju sabiedrība, or individual merchant. Yes, the LLC micro enterprise actually was very popular, but as they changed rules and changed the tax, it's not as popular anymore. But LLC, it's easy to establish. It provides everything that you want basically for a company for a long time. And it does include both the LLC fully fledged and the one with limited equity. Lovely. Yeah, just press that. Good. So what do you do when you need this? When you need either of these, but basically I'll mostly focus on the LLC. So you start off with a temporary bank account. It is important to mention that if you're making one with reduced equity, you don't necessarily need to do the step. You just need to prove that you have enough money in your account basically, but you don't need to forward any money or open a temporary bank account. This step can be done very quickly. It's generally done either in person or remotely, but if you have an e-signature and e-services, you can just do it remotely online. If you're not in Latvia, you can also use lawyers or a proxy that opens it for you. So yeah, then you transfer the share capital. So the fully fledged LLC, that's 2,800, and you have a temporary bank account. Lovely. So what then? You basically go to enterprise register. You can also do it online. You pick which company you want from the ones I mentioned or others if it happens to be so, and then you submit all the documents. So in terms of documents, there are a lot of different types of documents you need to submit. I will not go into them because it depends from the company type and what you're doing in general, but there are many lists in English and in Latvian prepared online, so you know what you need to submit. So you can do it yourself, you can get a lawyer to help you out, but obviously there are a couple of steps you need to do before you decide to open a company. But when that is done, you've done very well already. You transfer your temporary bank account or just open a proper bank account. And then that step must be done in person. That's a very inconvenient step if you live abroad, and I saw it with other even European founders who try to open a bank account in a Latvian bank. It's done to AML, or basically checking that who you are, whether you're doing everything legally. So this must be done in person. So a lot of times it incurs travel. Sometimes one time is not enough when actually going to a bank. And we're talking about business bank accounts. Personals can also be tricky, as some of you might know, but business bank account is a fully different story. I've seen people also from EU and non-EU struggle for a long time. So just something you need to account for, that banks, since Latvia had this encounter with Moneyball, have been quite iffy and picky in terms of their customers. And the last step, once you've gone through all of the things that I mentioned before and done very, very well, we have the state revenue service. So in Latvian, it's VID, valsts ieņēmuma dienas. So you register with it. So basically claiming that you'll be paying taxes. And you also can, if necessary, apply for VAT or PVN. So it's a number that you get if you are a VAT payer. And it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily obliged to get it, but I'll tell you a bit later whether you are and whether you should. So speaking of banks, this is a fairly common question I get. So can I open a different sort of bank? Nowadays, there are many different options. We have the very convenient, Revolut-wise, some use Paysera as well, and there are others depending on where you are from. So yeah, the answer is you can, and it's okay. Just depends. So what do you do as a company, what your plans are. So Revolut obviously is official bank, and generally it's fine. However, when I used to work at Overkill, one of the main investors was Altum, or actually done through European Regional Investment Fund, and they did not like it. So we couldn't accept anyone who wanted Revolut or Wise account. The reason for that being that the banks that are, well, I don't know, more historic banks, let's call them that are not neobanks, they have very strict AML rules, so they check their customers thoroughly. Whereas with Revolut and Wise and all neobanks, they can open the bank accounts fairly freely. They don't check too much who the company is. And so some investors, some grants that I'll talk about in future, and other companies that are under financial capital markets commission or other sort of regulations can have some sort of limitation. So in general, I would say that yes, it's possible, but just be careful, and sometimes it cannot be as lovely and easy as it seems. And to the VAT, so the PVN number, so yeah, as I mentioned, then that general, so you can choose whether to register with it or not. Most of the companies that I know actually do register, just reason because that's a general assumption. So if you do carry transactions that are subject to VAT, you must register as a VAT number. However, you're not obliged to do it. So there are some things that make you mandatory, so ask you to register for VAT number, but these three steps that I mentioned are the main things that make you register for it. However, there are many additional exceptions and rules depending on what you do. So basically, if you work with, if you have, so generally, if you sell services to business outside Latvia, automatically you should be registering it. If you sell goods to business outside Latvia, then it has to, if you spend, if the taxable revenue is more than 10,000 in the last period of 12 months, so it's not a year, is they actually have to account for it every 12 months, then you have to register. And yeah, if the taxable revenue is more than 40,000, in again, I think is the period here, then you have to register. So many times, yeah, you'll have to register for it. You can do it at the same time when you're going through the previous step of the last number, step number 4, when you register with the VID or State Revenue Service. On down, the steps are much more easy than they used to be historically, but it depends from company to company. So normally the business that I see, they do register. And obviously being a VAT payer, you also get a couple of good things out of it. Yeah, but that's on the accounting part. All right, so we've gone through the major process, and normally it takes between 1 to 2 weeks. It can be faster if you're fast with your documents, you have prepped everything. If you have lawyers doing it, they can be very quick on it as well, but it can take longer. I say the bank account is the longest one, the permanent bank account, especially if you register with the elderly functions, like elderly companies. They can be very, very picky, and they can be picky when you're already working with them. But yes, so generally between 1 to 2 weeks, but unfortunately I've seen it happen for months, and but I've seen it also happen in like 2 days. So yeah, depends on you and the bank and everyone else involved in this bureaucratic process. Right. Yeah, I know a couple of you are not from Latvia, so there are things you have to take into account, both as a Latvian and as someone from not from Latvia originally, where it gets expensive doing all of these processes I mentioned. So yeah, the expenses generally drive up, which is the time. So obviously your time invested translating documents, because majority of documents still have to be submitted in Latvian. If you use a lawyer to answer any questions you might not know so far, and to speed up the process, that obviously can be very expensive. And traveling. So as I mentioned, the bank account has to be open in person. If you don't have e-signature, that's another sort of travel. And yeah, if you need any other documents such as notaries, etc., that's even more expensive. Yeah, legal address can be tricky depending on where you live, if you can actually register there the business for your business needs, because the owner has to provide letter that the address can be used for that. Alternatively, of course, you can use Cloud Office, or some co-workings also offer this option for a fee, and that's adding to the expenses. So you do need a fee, and you can continue paying it whilst you're still registered as a company. Yeah, normally I wouldn't say this doesn't sound like a big step, but I've seen it be quite a hurdle to many of the startups that are just in the early stages of establishing a company. Yeah, so the bank account challenge, as I mentioned, for anyone, it can be tricky and timely to open a bank account. However, for non-Latvian residents, so even for people from EU, I've seen Polish people open bank accounts for months and visit the bank many times. So business bank accounts yeah, can be challenging. And in those cases, you can also use the opportunity to open a bank account in another EU country. Again, I wouldn't suggest this straight away, because it's not an easy process. But if I've seen, for example, a Polish company. They were all from Poland, and they all were opening a bank. They're opening a company in Latvia, and therefore they wanted a Latvian bank account. But that took a long time, and it was quite expensive. And with COVID, obviously, it was super tricky to travel. So they just decided, and we allowed them at Overkill to do that, just to open a Polish business bank account and then use that to register within the Latvian enterprise register. That's all completely legal, very actually quite common, but something to take into account when opening bank account, that can take a lot of time and a lot of your nerve. And yeah, the last expense, or in general, the challenge is the majority of documents are still submitted in Latvian. So you could be suggested to work with a lawyer or translator. Depends on where you submit documents, but the enterprise register is still mainly in Latvian. Right. And yeah, I've been talking about so much about Latvian entities, and do you actually need a Latvian entity? So in general, if you are making a business, you need a entity. Whether you need a Latvian entity is a good question. So there are the legal parts and the practical parts. So I would like to stress that depending on where your main country business is, where you're located, where your employees are located, and that you have to look at these elements. You don't necessarily need to have a Latvian company. I've seen people, generally startups with the Estonian e-residency, for example, is very common. I'm very true Latvian patriot, so I would still suggest opening a Latvian entity, paying taxes here. But to be honest, it's not a like must-have requirement. You can get around it. Just a lot of elements will differ depending on what choice you make. And also remember that I will not get into detail about it today, but once you start getting investment, you might be required to open more entities. For example, Nordigen at the moment actually is only in Latvia. However, we will probably be opening a British entity, but that's due to regulations, due to the great thing called Brexit that's making our life very, very difficult. So we'll be going through the process, and it's very tricky. Depending on country, it can be easier, it can be harder. But in some point in future, you're very likely to have many entities, and you might have investments in different entities and different share splits. And there's so many different things to know about companies. So today, the basics: you need an entity. Probably you need an entity. You need Latvian, very likely, but the rest of it is up to you. And those lovely people here today with us who don't have a like EU permanent resident thing, or are not from EU originally, or not Latvians. So there's this thing called Startup Visa by Latvian government. You might have heard about it already, you might not have, but basically it is a temporary resident permit for non-EU residents. So if you wish to open a company in Latvia, you can apply also for Startup Visa. It helps you to travel within EU. It allows you and your family and coworkers co-founders to be specific, to move to Latvia, and also allows you to access all the e-services, including e-signature that we have here, basically make your life easier. So that's just something to consider. Okay, hopefully that was fairly simple. You have a company and all is clear. So what now? What now? I'd say the first level was actually the simple stuff, something that most of you might have already done in your lives. And if you do go through this, that it's not too tricky. Because the tricky days once you reach level 2, day-to-day kicks in, and the more serious, sometimes boring things become important, because many of you don't want to do these day-to-day operations. Many of you just want to build your business, you want to earn millions, you want to do your dream job. But nevertheless, the only guarantees in life are death and taxes. Such a lovely sentence that many of you probably hate hearing, but the truth is that accounting is extremely important in a company. I will not go too deep into it. I actually asked Nordigen's accountant, so what do you want to share? And she just said to just make sure that everything is top notch, that everything you do is actually related to the company. If you spend your company's money, because it can get very tricky to explain it to the tax revenue service and other companies. Hey, why are you spending money on high heels? I still know founders who do that, and there have been obviously very loud cases from Latvian police buying uniforms and many heels for ladies. But just in general, make sure everything is clean, clear, and easy to explain to anyone checking your finances. And the important thing to remember is that it's not going to be only the audit or tax services coming and checking what is it that you do. Investors do look at that. Depending on how scrutinous the investor is, it can be very down to detail and looking at each of your receipts. It can be very high level transactions, but this will matter when you raise your money, and especially as you go forward and raise bigger rounds. But even from day one, it will matter. And that's why it's important to realize a couple of truths about accounting. So most of you have to do annual reviews, and it will be a pain, and that's why you should collect invoices and add business details or so-called requisite to any to receipts, depending on your accountant. Some can be more specific, some are okay with not requisite or business details on every of your receipts, but general, if it's over, I think it's the 28 or 29 euros, don't quote me on that, but something around 30-ish, then if it's without the VAT, then you need the business details. And yeah, it can be very annoying to say that at a shop and why you're actually trying to buy that with a business card, but it's a thing and you have to do that, because audit is a thing and not all people get audited straight away. But if you do, you want to make sure that you can provide information why you spend your company's money on such and such things. In general, accounting is the limited profession. There's actually a lot of restrictions, where you can spend your money, how it actually can be spent, how you register that. It's actually not that okay to buy individual gifts or go on lunches, and yeah, you have to use a lot of creativity and explain why you're doing this. If you have gone through this process, you know what I mean, but if you don't know yet, then find an amazing accountant. I would suggest as soon as possible. Accountants can be expensive. It can be fairly cheap, the ones that are just help you with day-to-day things such as salaries and the annual reviews that I mentioned. Audit it comes, they can be a lot more involved, especially if you have an in-house accountant, but very likely you don't need one for now. Just in early stages, just get someone, generally an outsourced service that helps you occasionally when needed, and it will free up your time so much. Because what you have to remember in startups is that your life, your work life is your time, and you'll spend so much time on your startup, and you don't want to spend time on details like this. You actually want to be building out your baby and making it an amazing product. So yeah, just make sure this is sorted, and I get someone to help you out. I think most of the startups that worked at Overkill, we suggested them to one specific accountant. So no promo here, Accounting Latvia. They're really, really great. And I think they cost a couple, like, I don't know, 10, 40-ish, something like a month, maybe a bit more, but it didn't compare to all the other expenses and time people saved. It was very convenient for most of the startups in our batches. And taxes. I'm not going to get into taxes apart from this list and some of the taxes that you see here, because there are a lot of different taxes. All of you will be paying some sort of taxes, hopefully. And yeah, it depends on the business, depends what you do, depends if you have employees, depends if you actually sell anything. So it differs from all different levels, but basically, if you have employees and you legally employ them with employee contracts, then you'll be paying lots of different taxes on them. Yeah, just to give an overview, for example, if you pay employee 1,000 euros already in cash, when he receives 1,000 euros, that employee with all the taxes will cost you as an employer around 1,718. So it's a big matrix, big multiple that you use when you hire someone. So hiring people in Latvia actually is very expensive. We have some amazing talent, and it's yeah, there are benefits of hiring people, and I will go into it when to outsource, but it can get very, very expensive. Yeah, and obviously all the other taxes you have to pay, and as the taxes are such a boring topic, and you're probably already just falling asleep by hearing more taxes, I will just follow through to much more interesting stuff such as legal. At Nordigen, we have 2 people who work on legal matters. We've always had someone, because we are a regulated business. So that means we are under FKTK in Latvian, so Financial Capital Markets Commission, I think. So anything that we do is looked at by special institutions who regulate fintech in Latvia specifically. Depending on what your startup does, it's very likely that you'll have different regulations, such as I mentioned the juice bar. You'll also have GDPR. Everyone nowadays have GDPR, but the Pārtikas Veterinārais dienests, which is basically food and veterinary service, something like that. They check whether everything is top notch at your where people are eating actually and making food. But yeah, it's important to understand both local and your specific regulations, what you have as a company. There's a lot of information on things like GDPR, on ISO, different certifications that you need, but you just need to understand what is it that you do, possibly consult someone. Do you need to look at anything specific? What are your risks? How can you mitigate them? Is it a high level risk? What you should take into account? How complex is the business? So there's a lot of elements to understand, but my general advice, and I consulted the legal person as well at Nordigen. So what should I share about legal side? He just said, read all contracts. So both any partnership contracts, client contracts, and especially investor contracts. Don't skim. If you don't understand something, look for advice. So legal advice is very expensive, unfortunately. So, but the risks that you take on if you don't understand something and sign it can be much, much higher. I've seen startups fall into traps and get trapped by both investors or different clients, and it's just the risks are very, very high. The chance that you need internal legal counsels, we do have two, are fairly low depending on what you do, but generally it's possible, but at least consult someone who has gone through these elements. If it's an investor contract, talk with other startups who have seen complicated investor contracts. If it's your first employee contract that you're making, it's great if you actually could have a lawyer look at it, whether you have actually hire a proper consultancy firm, like a lawyer firm, or just get a friend. Just don't avoid this thing, because it will come and haunt you later in the future. I can promise you that. So read contracts. That's very, very important. Okay, that was the level 2. Not super exciting, but still quite necessary thing. So level 3 is something basically taking next step. So things that I deal with day to day. I'll tell you what I've gone through recently and how that has affected Nordigen. And things that you'll face if you hire someone, if bigger things come around, if you decide to take the next step and get investment. So there's a lot of things, so many things in startups. I'm trying to put everything in this in this session, and I hope that give you good at least foot to stand on and to see what you'll be dealing with when you open a company and when you start a startup. So getting back to you guys. So hopefully that you're all still here, haven't gone on to many extra tabs and new windows. Yes, I have a quiz question ready for you again. I'm gonna have a sip of water while you're still joining and finding the hashtag. Okay. All right. What is startup law? I think that's been hopefully mentioned to you so far, and that you know already what it is. I think all of these three are somewhat common. If you clicked not the right one, I cannot blame you. But because the startup law also includes somewhat a definition, but not the most valid one. I would say not the most expensive one. It's not created to regulate what defines a startup or what startup can do. It's startup law, as the title doesn't indicate. It's actually a support scheme for startups. So it's a different way how you can get funding from government or support, mainly support in different ways. So basically provides a lot of benefits when you open a company. Starting off with 0% individual income tax, fixed social tax, and 45% co-financing for highly qualified employees. There's obviously quite a lot of bureaucratic loops you have to jump through to get support of startup law. But if you have, for example, more expensive employees that have, I think it's masters and PhD or high-level developers, then they help to co-finance 45% their salaries, basically. And these are very, very convenient benefits, and you do use them as a startup. The law was very murky and actually very bad a couple of years ago. only, I think, 5 startups complied with it. So there were a lot of loops you have to jump through, but they changed it last year, and no, not last year, very recently, and last year or year before. So yeah, the requirements are now very loose if you look at it. So you don't even need an investor. You generally just need to develop an innovative product, or just get some fairly small tickets from different investor sources, and then that's one of the main requirements. Then you shouldn't have more than 150 euro tax debt and shouldn't be ongoing in bankruptcy. So that's primarily it. Obviously you have to fill out a lot of forms, as it is with all of these supports, but Nordigen did it. We had our accountant do majority of the work, actually, and yeah, that's why we are very happily reaping the benefits of startup law. And I think when you start this journey, especially if you're going on to a proper startup path, there are a lot of unanswered questions. Obviously, internet's a lovely source. There's everything online, but it's great to have a local community, local help. So these are institutions I would add. Well, mentors and advisors should probably be in my next slide. But anyway, so Leah and Magnetic Latvia, probably many of you have already heard of them, face them in different ways. So they help out with lots of different things, translation, different programs. They also help with funding in many ways, and they help push through the startup law and yeah, many lovely things, and also research just to read yeah, how to open a startup, what are the steps you should take, what other cool startups are there. So they work on that. And Startin.lv is the Latvian Startup Association. So Diana used to head that organization, and it's basically a non-profit helping to gather different startups, like association does. So help to voice the problems of Latvian startup ecosystem, help you meet different other startups that are facing similar problems as you are. And in general, yeah, talk about startups and try to make them a bigger thing in Latvia. And Labs of Latvia is all of these fairly similar things, but they're all in different ways. And Labs of Latvia is yeah, a very good resource if you just want to know what's going on in the community, and they read more about different startup news. And I think they also post sometimes occasionally about foreign startups, Baltic scene. But in general, I would suggest to follow them either on Twitter or LinkedIn and see what's going on around. And mentors and advisors. So I'll mention them together with the community slide that I have here, because I feel like in all of these places, you can easily, well, not easily, but hopefully get mentors and advisors help you on the way. The general difference, I would say, mentor is someone less involved, but it depends on what relationship you have. Advisors, you can also give them a share of your company. I see a lot of advisors in, for example, medical startups or some more specific businesses where you need some sort of industry expert knowledge, and they spend significant time helping you out actually build your product. But yeah, having seen many startups go through Overkill and Overkill's acceleration programs, many of the mentors that we invited actually stayed in touch with the startups, and it's lovely to see them chat both on LinkedIn or just yeah, see that they have become official advisors to startups at some point. So that's something very helpful, and people in general are very willing to help. I think depends on what sort of mentor you'll be looking for, but many people from Tech Hub community or Textual, when you go to conference and meet both investors or just people working in similar projects or products, or have been in potentially your potential clients could also become your mentors and help you guide you through this process. And there are also different software such as Curio, that's a Lithuanian startup. They help you basically match you with a mentor that you can see a list of different industry experts. And that's a paid service, but you can still find someone who has potentially faced problems that you're facing now and help you get ahead. Riga Tech Girls is an amazing community. Yeah, I've spoken with the girls on a couple of different occasions and really love what they're doing, and another source of community, of way how to find out how to build a better startup. And as with anything, I generally suggest you to read a lot. I'll suggest a couple of books to read at the end, but yeah, LinkedIn, also Facebook, and different online forums on Reddit, AngelList, and just generally reading TechCrunch, which is tech news. Morning Brew is a good one, just in general overview of the what's going on in the world. And Sifted. So Sifted is I think Financial Times, basic Financial Times product, but they focus on the European startups scene, and especially also on Baltics. So anything be happening, you're going to see it on Sifted. And yeah, and as you know, having being in a startup school, that's a very good source also for knowledge. Yeah, there are many activities going on in Latvia and abroad. I would suggest looking either at university or different corporates that are launching different sorts of accelerators, incubators. I know that Swedbank was doing something for environmental or sustainability type of startups. Then obviously Lias incubators have a lot of very interesting knowledge and discounts for startups when you enter these incubators. And similarly with startup schools and accelerators. So the thing with accelerators that a lot of them take equity. So it means that they will take a share of your company in some point in future, but they can be an amazing source of contacts, knowledge, and yeah, just guidance. So I've seen a lot of startups start at local accelerators. Like I think Latvia, that's about it, apart from maybe depends where you put the Swedbank one. There's obviously many more in Lithuania and Estonia, but don't be scared to look further. Y Combinator or YC, Seedcamp 500, those are some of the most common ones, but general startup accelerators are quite a cool thing. If you have time, if you have energy, that this will very likely take a big chunk of your time. You actually might need to move to the country depending on the restrictions. YC, however, now is doing international and you don't have to go anywhere. In general, I would suggest to do it in person if you can. Different sort of experience. The community is just grander. You get a better feel. You get like you dive into startups. You're around people as passionate about building something great as you are, and it's just very energetic atmosphere altogether. Nordigen was in a couple different smaller accelerators and some that are not around anymore. Some equity-free accelerators, and also Seedcamp. So Seedcamp is international. They do their accelerator, the courses so-called, in different sorts of countries and regions. And yeah, we did it a while ago. I think Nordigen, I wasn't part of Nordigen when we started, and I think they joined Seedcamp around 4 years ago or something, and we're actually still very much ingrained in the community. So they have an online platform, and YC does as well. Firstly, you get advice. If you have any new topics, you can find new investors, you can get clients. As joining as an operations lead, I also joined operations community and found many cool people that I just talk with once a month. And yeah, we just share knowledge and share what's burning now at Nordigen and how we can help each other. So very much suggested, good step, but it depends on your basically time availability and your interest, and whether you feel this is the right time for you. Maybe you feel like you know everything already, and that's fine by me. But yeah, in general, this is quite a useful platform to get new knowledge and contacts. Okay. So I just want to warn everyone that in general, building a startup is a very lengthy process. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It takes your life. And I don't know what ideas you're building. It's quite important to understand whether you're building a startup or a lifestyle business. Because if you haven't been over this in your first lectures, then a startup is something generally that's scalable. You don't necessarily need to take investment. It's just something that's scalable, can grow exponentially. So having a juice cafe, a juice bar that I mentioned beforehand, whilst it can be amazing as running a business, in the base stages, it's not a startup. It's a new company, true. And I explain this to my friends all the time. But the expenses ramp up as you become bigger. So it's not scalable. You need more people, you need more juice, you need more oranges to make juices. Whether if you're building a software, if you don't look into infrastructure and you more developers, etc., then it is scalable, a lot more scalable than a juice bar is. The lines have become quite blurred, if I'm honest with you. If you know WeWork, for example, that was a co-working that really took off in the last 5-10 years, and then it crashed and burned, and it's still going on. But basically, it was a co-working space. People used to live there, so co-living as well. It was a place where there was always there was beer in the fridge, and people just used to share their ideas and work together. But that's also a startup. Also, it's actually just real estate space with beer. So yeah, nowadays you can get investments into all kinds of things, and you can create a startup out of something that's not officially originally a startup. But no matter what you do, even if it's a juice bar, it will take a lot of time, and you have to be ready for this. And I actually love a question when startups ask me, especially when I was an investor, and even now I get it. So do you want your own startup? And I'm like, hell no. Terrible thing to say to people who are at the startup course. But the idea is that I know how much time it takes. I see the fire in people's eyes. I've seen fire die. And I believe you have to be super passionate about something. You have to be in love with this idea. You have to see your startup as a baby. You have to want it to grow, flourish, or become the next big thing. Some people want to change the world. Some people want to become millionaires. Either is fine. You just have to know why you're doing this. Because I've heard a lot of startup stories with, for example, David Benzel, one of Overkill's partners. He has a amazing startup story, and he's actually an investor. So he said he would do it all over again. It has high highs and low lows, but the low lows, when you listen to them as a side listener or just someone who overheard his story, they sound low. And yeah, me hearing those stories so far, I haven't got my perfect idea just yet. So I haven't jumped into the startup world. I would love to have my own business, just some sort of lifestyle supporting my passions and hobbies. But a startup, this is a full-time job. And I don't mean full-time as in 9 to 6, but you will love it. And hopefully it'll be a lot of high highs. But yeah, just a little warning. Yeah, after my super passionate speech about startups, we have possibly the last question of the quiz. Yeah, there might be one more. This might be the last one. I'll let you know. Just another sip of water while you're heading into our Slido. And as I mentioned before, a Slido also has the Q&A. As you might have mentioned, as you might have seen already, that when this quiz part is not active, you can actively post questions. So don't be shy. I will answer hopefully all of them, or at least as many as I can. But now it's time for the live quiz. Okay, what is ESOP? Not read these out. I feel like I'll only distract you. Actually, it took a lot of time to think of the alternatives to the true answer. Yeah, ESOP. So very good. Very good. Yeah, the correct answer is employee stock ownership plan. So I think the reason why a lot of people answer the second one is because in some cases it's also called employee stock option plan, and we call it so at Nordigen too. But if you notice, then the second one is employer, so not correct, share, which is also not, it depends where you look at it, but process. So it's not a plan. Yeah, I'll talk about it in a bit more detail, but this is something we just announced at Nordigen. Very proud of it, very much planning to ingrain it in everything that we do. But basically, before we head into it, a lot of people, 4 pals, possibly pals who actually organizes this. And if that is so, I would have expected you to answer 4 and 4. If it's not that pals, good job. with 38 seconds to count. Then, yeah, number one. We'll see how we, how we remunerate this. But that was it of the quiz. I'll have a couple more things on the presentation side, but don't forget to ask questions as we go. Okay. So the reason I'm asking about the ESOP, and yeah, I will tell you about it in detail in the next slide, is hiring. And as much as most of founders want to do everything themselves, many of them actually are scared of giving away ownership or responsibilities or trusting others to fill out their task. You will have to hire sooner or later. If your company grows, most likely you'll have to hire. It's a lovely process, terrifying for some, but in general, I've done it at different companies I worked at. And at Nordigen, we just recently, when I joined, we were 28 people, and I joined only recently, a little over 6 months, so coming into 7 months, so fairly recently. And we were 28 people when I joined, and now we're 49 today, and I think we have around 5 more contracts signed. So basically double in size in very short time. It doesn't happen for all the startups. It will not happen to you probably straight away. But yeah, other Latvian startups that you see. So Printify kicked off with a couple of people. Then they were fairly soon they reached 80, then 220, and now they're, I don't know, 400, something like that. Printful, similar story. Jeff App, couple of amazing guys started their startup, and now they are, I think they're also 50 or something like that. So yeah, this can happen in a blink or happen in a long time. But important thing is, when before you start, have a contract or contracts on hand before hiring. There will be a lot of, again, loops to jump through, a lot of small and big things when you hire. You need to decide on your hiring process. Is it 1 interview? Is it 5? Is there a task? Who does all the things? Is it just you, or do you have a COO working on this? But generally have contracts and some sort of systems in plan. You can change these things as you go, but our contract is our base, how we protect us as a company, our intellectual property if someone leaves, and yeah, how we protect the employee himself or herself, obviously. So we had it drafted by a legal company, then our legal counsel changed it a little bit. Ours actually looks fairly scary. You don't have to have it that extensive as we do, but have something on hand. And then you can think about details. Do you need acceptance grants, NDAs? Generally, don't make it too difficult in the beginning, but be prepared. Then ESOP, again, I'll get into it a bit in next slide, but basically that is option that you give to your employees to own a part of the company at some point in the future. It's fairly new in Latvia. It's very likely a lot of you don't actually know what it means, and I just keep on throwing around this word ESOP, but it's a cool tool that you should use. To be honest, in like America and the UK, if you don't have ESOP, a lot of people don't want to join a startup because that actually it allows you to reap the benefits if something goes well. But ESOP has this lovely thing called cliff, so you don't have to necessarily have it, but generally it's very suggested. So if people leave before their shares become before the options can become shares, then they don't get the option to convert them into shares. So that sounds all tricky, but basically your employees will change in the beginning. Law will protect your options or your shares, and you should protect yourself as well. So that's why it's important not to go out C-level titles, also not to go out C-level titles when you become a massive company and you have very inexperienced person in C-level position. It will become very, very awkward to denominate them or introduce new C-level titles when you need to. There's some very interesting literature on this, and Andris Bērziņš, a Latvian, as a startup godfather, he talks about this a lot on Twitter, but I cannot stress this enough. So yeah, be careful of your C-level titles. I generally would keep them to founders as much as possible in the beginning. And yeah, as a startup, you actually don't have too much to offer. Many of startups cannot pay big salaries, unfortunately, just yet. So what you do sell on is your mission, vision, and culture. being a part of startup is very cool. I love it. I have so much flexibility. I have a lot of input. Whilst we're still 50 people at Nordigen, I feel like I have my voice, I have my freedom. I plan how I want to do my work, and yeah, I can work obviously from anywhere, when I want, how I want. There's no micromanagement. This depends on the company, but that is our culture. And people who join our company, who want to join Nordigen, they buy into this culture, and that's why a lot of them stay. They don't want to be part of corporates anymore. Some corporates can be amazing as well, but that is one of the elements you can sell as a startup. And then obviously mission and vision. You have to explain what you want to achieve, what's your overall game, why you want to do this. So mission in general is the North Star, the aim that you're heading into. Vision is how you're gonna get there, and culture will be supporting elements why you do it. So it depends on the definition. Sometimes it is what, why, and how, but these are just the main steps you should be following. And yeah, as with anything in startup world, you should be making it about you in the initial stages, whilst you should be ready to give away some sort of responsibility and ownership in the early hiring stages. It's important to make it personal. Printify is a good example. So the founders, so both James and Artis, they were present at all of the interviews until 200 people. That seems like an unreal number. We have 50 at Nordigen. We don't do that anymore. But our Nordigen's hiring process is quite lengthy. We at least 5 people get you as an applicant get to see minimum 5 people. So you get a better sense of who we are as a company. But it's very important to pick the first people carefully to make sure that you want them to be part of your company. And remember that anyone joining company will be creating a culture. So you want the right people to join you to create the good setup, and also believe in what you're doing. In general, the work at startups is heavy. People work more than at a 9-to-5 or 9-to-6 job. We spend a lot of energy to make this into the amazing thing we believe it can be. And yeah, that's why there are things we're willing to give away, like our time and energy, but the things there that we want back. So yeah, just think about these things in the beginning. And I'm always a proponent of hiring slow, so picking the right people, but firing fast. Common saying and often true. So whenever you look at the people you have, you're considering a firing, don't avoid this, and don't prolong the process the more than you should do. Because I would say we just recently discussed this at Nordigen, and there's almost never a case when we look at someone we had to let go and we're like, yeah, we should have waited longer, or we couldn't have done it in the beginning. Because when you are quite sure it's most likely gonna happen, and better to do it sooner, both for you and the person. So yeah, at the Nordigen, we think about ourselves as a team rather than a family. And in general, every company should be more of a team, because you're keeping the best people on. You want to strive as a startup rather than build even more family ties than you already have. So yeah, just take something like this into account when you're hiring. And yes, sometimes you don't want to, or you don't have to hire, and sometimes it's cheaper to outsource. There are many reasons why you might choose to hire someone, but general rule of thumb is that if you repeat some process a lot and constantly and often, you should hire someone. But if you don't, then you should outsource. Obviously, there's these elements about whether you should hire at all. So that depends on many elements, obviously, in terms of your energy, your time, of your knowledge. So if you don't know how to do things, you can learn them, or it's first and faster to hire someone. But yeah, in terms of outsourcing, this is the general rule of thumb that we also follow here at Nordigen. And the ESOP. So we call it employee stock option plan, but in many sources you'll find an employee stock ownership plan. So basically, it's a part of your whole share capital. So if you have 100 shares, you devote a chunk of your shares to your employees. So it's not that you don't devote them directly. It's not something, you don't give them 5% straight away. So it means that they have options to buy them at some point in future. The plan differs depending on where you're registered as a company. Nordigen is a Latvian company, so our ESOP runs under a Latvian law. There are certain restrictions, but in general, Latvian ESOP regulations are the best ones I think in the world, actually, by Index Ventures. So they used to be very, very crap, and many startups couldn't use them. But nowadays they're very friendly towards startups. And what they actually help with, so to help understand why I've been talking about this, is that everything is it's about employees, about the talent. So it basically provides ownership or sense of ownership for your employees. So you're telling them, hey, I have devoted 10 to 20% for my employees. Okay, you don't own it just yet, but if you stay with me for at least a year, then you can own shares in a company. Yeah, and that's as an owner, it might not sound so amazing, but as an employee, that's such a good tool to attract and retain best talent. So it means that the longer they stay, the bigger, the more options they will own, and it will be an incentive for them to stay around and make this company an amazing thing. I can tell you more about ESOPs in a different setting. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. But basically at Nordigen, we provide them to all employees. So everyone who works here, we're planning to do that for the foreseeable future. We did a separate presentation. We recently actually just launched it. And the reason we did it and why we provide it to everyone is just to provide the ownership, which we believe is important. We want everyone to benefit in a case of success. So if Nordigen has an exit, or if it's bought, or we have an IPO, it's just basically a liquidity event. Everyone whose options like bears the fruit. And and we believe that it's an amazing tool to encourage everyone to participate in Nordigen success, to drive growth together, have shared focus. And so you're not just doing it for money. You're doing your work here, you're working for 8 hours as an employee because you believe in this thing. You want to make it bigger, better, and you want to help and contribute to this big growth. We'll see how it goes. And in Latvia, ESOP has been fairly, I mentioned rarely used. International companies have them. So Printful, Printful doesn't, Localize have them, but they have HQs elsewhere. In states, a lot of times in Britain. So they've been using them for a while. Nordigen chose Latvian ESOP, and we really, really hope that more companies will join into this. So if you're planning a startup, plan for an ESOP. And if you don't plan for an ESOP, your investors will think for an ESOP, because investors, while potentially not in the pre-seed stage, in later rounds, investors also believe this is a crucial element to keep your employees, especially your key employees. You don't have to give shares to everyone in your company or give options to everyone in your company. It depends on your option plan. But for the key employees, that is crucial. And giving options is safer than giving out outright shares. It's also much simpler nowadays, and very powerful tool basically to make your employees more engaged. Yes, all of this, what I've been telling is it's all good, great. Hopefully you've had interesting time, but I just want to give another sense of warning that expenses build up very, very quickly. Even things like fundraising that Diana told you about, whilst it might seem like a process to get a lot of money, it actually is expensive before you get the money in. Not just opening a company, opening a bank account, translating documents, hiring. Almost every step that you do costs money. So what do you do then? What do you do when you need money? A lot of people look at investment straight away, or look at investment even when they don't need money. So there are different schools of thoughts, and I don't know what Diana told you, but my thoughts on this is that in general, bootstrapping is underrated. If you look at a company called Localize, a very cool Latvian startup, so they decided to raise money only very recently, 2 years ago, and they did so because they saw so much potential for growth. They were like, we can do this well, we don't need investment, but we could become huge. And they have people wise, I think they have tripled since raising investment, and then they raised straight away 6 million. So they didn't go for 50,000 or 200K or 2 million seed rounds. They went straight away for 6 million. So you can being a startup doesn't mean you need investment straight away. And it's very important to decide when to look for it. I would suggest look for when you have already validated the product. I don't know much sure what MVP, so minimum viable product. And I will also suggest finding out when you already have had a product market fit. Finding product market fit isn't that simple and easy, and it's great if you have a couple of customers and you already see that people want your product, companies want your product. This is it. You have clocked into something, and yeah, you have a lot of potential. So that is when you're a high growth company and investors want those. If you will come to an investor and say, hey, like I'm running out of money, I need, I don't know, 200K, not great selling point. Investors are so after companies that don't need money. And when you can bet investors against each other and be like, hey, yeah, investment is cool, but I don't actually need it at the moment, that's great. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you need investment. It generally helps if you want to grow very quickly, if you want to hire, if you need more complex tech. But if you can go without an investment for a while, please do so. It will still, the ownership will stay with you. You can still make your own decisions. You will not get new board members that you might get in case of an investment. Not always, but you might do. And the company is still yours. You're in the driver's seat. You make the rules. You do what you believe is the best. So it's your call how to do it. And sometimes you have no choice, but it's just something to remember that you don't always need to raise money. Yeah, just my comment on you on this. But if you do decide to raise money, and if you are more than one person, and if you're getting an ESOP, then there is this thing as share split. So how do you divide your shares? Who owns what part of the company? I've seen so many different things happen. I've seen founders do it 50-50, like CEO gets 50, CTO also 50. I've seen it 90-10. And then I've seen investors come in and an angel investor snapping 40%. That's so painful to see as a next level or next stage investor. Just think about it again. Read contracts. Don't give away too much too early. I'd say there is a rule of thumb, which I think after Series A, which is still a while to go, you should still own at least 40% of company. So within the founders. The shares you can give them away very quickly, but just be careful where you do that. The same with advisors or any early employees. That's why it's better to use ESOP and just account for it. As I mentioned, you don't necessarily need to have it straight away, but I saw that most of the foreign companies that came to Overkill, including EU and Ukraine and Belarus, they already accounted for ESOP. And generally it's between 10 to 20%, somewhere like that. They just say, yeah, I have 40-40, like so CEO has 40, CTO has another 40 and 20% for ESOP. Yeah, so it differs from company to company, but one thing that I would suggest, not always practice and not everyone believes in it, but to have an equal share between the founders. It doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50, but if you want the person to have a buy-in and stay with the company for a while, he should have a significant part in the say and in the company altogether. And in order to guarantee your protections as founders, make a founders agreement. Within your first investment, that will already be required, but basically that's a lot of different set of rules, a set of agreement that if anything happens, for example, if one founder leaves, he doesn't take 50% of the company for himself. Generally, this is, you can find examples online. This is a very important step that you should do even without investment, just so you know you have you share ground that you stand on, and a lot of things come out when you're signing founders agreement. So better do it sooner rather than later. Okay, money is good. Money is very good for a startup that's short for cash. and you don't necessarily need to give away your shares or get investment. There is free money around, and yeah, a lot of it actually, especially if you look and spend time on it. So there are different government grants, different EU, Horizon, Erasmus, a lot of different things you can actually use. They might not necessarily be called grants, they might be called something else, but anything equity free where you don't give away your shares, including incubators, accelerators, can be very useful for you. Sometimes in equity-free incubators, accelerators, you don't get money. Sometimes you do, depends what you do. For example, there used to be this, it was accelerator and VC fund. Can't remember in Latvia, how it was called in Latvia. Toby works there. Suddenly I forgot his name, but yeah, he was imprimatur. Yes, so imprimatur. They were giving out, I think, 50K for equity free. You just had to repay it at some point in the future if you still had a successful startup. So not the case with imprimatur at the moment, but there's still cases like that where you can get yeah, very good deals. And obviously startup competitions. So this is a tricky part. So basically any of this will take a lot of time and investment. And startup competitions and conferences, they can be super useful. You can find amazing investors, partners, clients, employees there. So in general, they can be very useful, but a lot of times it's just a big party. And if you don't spend your time wisely, you can just lose very valuable time. And I've seen startups participate in one competition after another. And Nordigen has actually gotten a lot of AWS credits out of startup competitions, but we very wisely evaluate whether this competition, whether this specific participation will be worth it. Will it be worth our investment, time investment, and obviously some sort of monetary as well, travels and stuff. But yeah, so these things depends, and anything with free equity or other horizon grants, other free grants and grants, you have to take into account for bureaucracy. For example, with Horizon, I don't know how it works at the moment, but there used to be special agencies that just help you to apply for these grants. Yeah, so not straightforward answer, but there are places where you can get free money basically. And yeah, I've seen this question pop up from startups. So do I need patents or certification? So yeah, as mentioned here, in theory, it's great if you can get them. Depends on your business. If you're in medtech, most likely you'll need some sort of CE certification, different sorts of certification in America. In practice, it's very hard. There are a lot of limitations with patents, especially if it's something super unique. Yes, go for it. If you have time and money, because patents cost a lot of money, and there's limitations on where the patent is active, for how long it's active. And in general, if I'm honest with you, actually see very little startups going this road. It can sometimes be beneficial and protect you against some sort of theft, but companies nowadays are very, very creative and can get around these official protections. Yeah, business partnerships. I've seen a lot of startups in the early stages be building partnership and the departments, for example, or just looking at one partnership after another one. They can be very useful, but they also take a lot of time. In early stages, haven't seen too many partnerships work because your partner will also want something from you. And that's why it's important. It's mutually beneficial, especially for you. You don't want to spend money or time on it if it doesn't come in handy for you. As with any legalities, make sure you read the fine print and TNCs, because again, I've seen some not so pleasant happenings happen with the contracts and partnership contracts as well. And pick your partners wisely. You don't want to lose your time, energy, reputation. So those are all elements that are very, very crucial at any point of the startup. So yeah, just if you do decide to follow this route, be thoughtful and don't pick a random partner straight away. Yeah, something from a head of operations. So all the processes and procedures and policies, that's all my department, plus yeah, legals help a lot. So there's these, I like to write down things a lot. Like I want to know the step by step. If someone asks me some sort of questions, for example, what is our availability? I want to be able to answer these. So in general, for people to be able to join your company or follow some sort of guidelines. You have to write these down and be able to share them either publicly or locally, but just these things will become bigger as you become bigger. We are at the moment working on many processes and procedures. Some elements will be asked when you raise investment or apply for grants. You might be asked for IT security elements, or how do you protect your idea in general. So yes, I wouldn't spend too much time on it. I would write down your mission and vision, so you have everyone on the same page and you know what you're working on together as a company, and obviously use it in recruitment as well. I would write down time off availability and just general work culture. So what do you expect people to do? How do you expect them to behave? What your values are? You can go into massive 19 and 90 page documents and write a book, as Netflix did. But in general, have your general idea what you want to do, and build upon with time. There'll be a lot of things that you notice. People ask, how do we do this? How do we do that? Start writing these things down. It's better to do it prematurely, and if you have time to write down. So when can people get a vacation? How do they actually submit it? What documentation is needed? How was the procedure for getting a work trip? Yes, you probably will not think about these now, but just once you do them once, write it down and it will become easier going forward. So this is a list of handy tools that I think we used most of them or all of them actually at Nordigen. Give me a second. So G Suite, you probably all know, can be free, can be paid. We have a paid version, but it's basically our email service. A lot of people use Outlook and other tools, but I love G Suite. I use Gmail, Sheets, this presentation is Google Slides. So very convenient for me. Our infra also believes it's safe. So safe for what we do there. So very handy tool. Obviously Google Meets or Zoom, as we're using Zoom now for online meetings. Slack is a great information sharing platform, communication channel. There are other alternatives, but Slack also has a free version, the same as Zoom does. And we have tried many others. Some companies or some Zgen people like Discourse, not a fan, not safe from our interest perspective. So we stick to Slack. We used the free version for a long time and it fulfilled our needs until now. So we now have a paid version. Gets pricey very quickly, so stick to free as long as you can. Yeah, so any project management tool. I use Trello personally, but most of our company uses UTrack. There are other tools. People love Asana. Then I know I haven't mentioned it here, but I also want to give a shout out to Notion. So that's just a knowledge sharing platform where you can do everything that you want. Including project management, knowledge base, anything. So Notion is something I would suggest, or similar tools such as Coda. Yeah, but basically that's platform, collaboration platform. And yeah, most of you will need cloud services. We use AWS, and I mentioned the get credits because you can get as a startup a lot of free credits. So I noticed it's almost half past. I'm almost done. And so you get to ask a couple of questions, but yes, so super quickly, AWS for our cloud, and there are other tools as well, but get credits in startup competitions, Calendly for scheduling, Figma or Canva for drawing up designs and sharing them, or just simple things, making a logo if necessary, or making out product vision. Typeform, beautiful forms, or Google Form, not beautiful, but free. Building a website on Wix, Squarespace, Build. Obviously, you can use WordPress or any tools you want, but for many business, they have worked at Squarespace until they have served what I need. No-code platform, super easy, very convenient. And this last weird combination of words obviously has HR, so it's convenient for hiring and onboarding and basically processes in HR. It's called HRS because it stands for HR Information System. We use Charlie HR. There are others, but basically that helps to monitor when people go on vacation. We don't have to submit official vacation requests, so you just do it via platform. When people are ill, when you have new people joining the company, has all of our onboarding information, handbook, very convenient tool for org charts and other elements that are just the procedural parts of HR and operations. Okay. I think it's my last slide, and I read a lot, and I suggest you to either read, listen, check out different sort of podcasts, and these are some of the books that I would suggest to you to read. Some on negotiations, some on just venture deals. So what happens when you are raising money? Some on culture, so what motivates people and how to build your work culture. Mom Test is a great one if you're building a new product, to actually ask the real questions of what are the true questions you should be asking your clients, not the ones you should be wanting to hear, not the answers you want to hear. And obviously classic 0 to 1 and lean startup. So I'll share this presentation afterwards. You can check these out. I have many other books on Add Me and Goodreads, and you'll see what I would suggest you to read. Okay, so that's the last question. And then we're going into Q&A, and I hope that's okay, pals, that I haven't taken too much over my time. But yes, I hope this appears straight away, because I've been having some errors tonight with Slido. But basically, I would love you to suggest something that I didn't write here. I'm not massive on podcasts, but there are some that I do listen to, and there's tons of it out there. In general, without reading, there's this newsletter, Your Inner CEO. Actually, I have been suggested that. I wanted to listen to an audiobook of it, but I didn't find it either in Audible or Scribd. Yeah, those are the two services I used. But Your Inner CEO, I heard very, very good things about it. And if you are not big on reading and want small snippets, Blinkist is a very good resource for that. Just gives you the main outlines of the book and the most valuable information out of it. But okay, clearly none of you read books or podcasts, but thank you for participating in Slido nevertheless. Here's your homework. Yes, I'm not sure whether I was meant to present it just now, but that is what I hope you accomplish within the next period of time. So not too difficult. And if you're actually planning to open a company at some point, you should think about these things. So out of the company types that I outlined, decide which one you would open and why. Research what documents are needed, because the list is quite lengthy and I didn't mention it here. And then decide if it's just you or there are other founders, or you have an ESOP plan. What would be your initial share split? And in this share split, also maybe think about investors. So if you have your first investor, how much would you be willing to give away? All right. Top questions. Great. That's a very good question. So if there's any questions, I just stop them, pose them here.
There are, by the way, sorry for intruding. There are a couple of questions in the chat as well, but I guess let's start with the Slido.
Oh, we have a great, which I'll click a cover that's covered. Can you recommend someone experienced with bootstrapping? It's a good question. I can mention, I can write down these things a bit later. I know mentors who've gone through bootstrapping, and I think Localize in general is a good one to approach because, firstly, Nick and Pavel are very approachable founders. They have a lot of knowledge and they bootstrap for a long time. If you need contacts, I can also suggest them. But those are the first one I was thinking about. And interestingly, Printful also was one of the big companies that didn't raise for a long time. They raised only recently. My theory is that they raised so they would have a number to set on for their IPO, because their plan is to have initial public offering. So they now have raised money and they have a set, like this is the bar that we are reaching as a minimum. But it's a good question. I'll keep this one in mind, and I'll think of more and just add it to the slides and think of mentors who can help out with that, and then other Latvian and Baltic companies that have done so. Because the interesting thing with bootstrapping is what you hear in the news are the companies that have raised money, because your company has raised 1 million, 200,000, become a unicorn. But those things appear because you hear them in news. Bootstrap companies don't actually appear because of their raising or not raising that often in the news. So that's my answer, not answer. House, did you want me to read, or should I read the answers, the questions?
Oh, I can read them. I was just
I opened the chat now. So Okay, go
Because there
on.
are some very ancient ones, I think, that really go back to the very beginning of your presentation. Well, let's start with that one. Yeah. Can we invest prototype instead of cash? I'm not exactly certain what is meant by this. Maybe you do.
The only thing I can think of is that's us in the share capital.
It was
whether
definitely at the very beginning when talking
I can
about
see
LLC.
616. Yeah, so maybe it's thought with share capital. Can you, instead of putting in money, so that, for example, 2,800 euros, can you open it without cash using something else? Prototype, I wouldn't say so. The thing with, you can use other items, let's say, that are evaluated specifically for this purpose, and then the amount of worth is mentioned, and then you can use that in order to open and use it as a share capital in order to open your company. But that's something I never suggest people to do. It would better be to open an LLC with just limited equity. You need €1 for that actual equity type for share capital. Because evaluating the item, I've seen people, for example, offer their Macs or laptops. Whilst they are very, very valuable, it's expensive to evaluate them. You need independent evaluator, timely, and just generally not worth it. What does it mean, point two? I think there was somewhere about whether a legal person can own a company.
That was precisely the thing.
Yeah. So the cross means that either a legal person can or can't. Cross means no, check means yes. So there are types of companies where a legal person, so another LLC can own a LLC, or it has to be individual owning that LLC. That's basically it. Yeah, depends on the company type when that is allowed, when it isn't. So. Okay. So I see a question now on Slido. I'll just address it straight away. Is it possible to start with equity-free SIA and then convert to fully blown one? So equity-free, not. And whenever you read rules, it is at least €1, so not equity-free per se. But I mentioned during presentation there was someone yesterday who opened 1 cent SIA. I just saw it in news, didn't research, not sure how it happened, because everywhere when you read the descriptions of equity, limited equity SIAs, LLCs, it's at least €1. So you can open €1 SIA and then convert it to a 2,800 euro share capital later in time. There are some limitations how you can do that, when you can do that, but generally it's fine, and you can operate just with limited or €1 SIA for a while. So I can see, is it important to activate VID before business is operational?
I'm guessing it was meant as VAT, but that is my guess.
Okay, so well, I mentioned the VATs when you, if it's VID, so there's, I will answer it in twofold. So if it's a VAT, then I mentioned when you need it. It's not, it's sooner if you need it, because you don't always need it. But I mentioned the cases when you need it and when you don't need it. So if you need it, I would suggest doing it straight away when you go to the state revenue service. Most likely you will need it, especially if you work with clients abroad or you offer services, so then you will need it. But you don't have to do it straight away. You can get it a bit later. And to activate VID, you go to, if you talk about VID, state revenue service, you go there when it is important. You have to go to state revenue service, even if you don't get VAT, because you have to be put on Lorsoft or uzņēmuma registers as a company. And if you're looking for partners or clients, or most of any contract you sell, they will need you to see there. And it is, you need to be part of state revenue services database. So Rafod tried to open Revolut business account, but it wasn't getting through. Well, yeah, I haven't tried it myself, actually. I know a couple of friends who did it, but maybe Revolut now is a bit tighter on it. as they have officially obviously opened a bank in Latvia, then maybe they are a bit more, ask more documents or something else didn't happen throughout. So yes, I see. I'll leave the bootstrapping question open, so I just remember. So how really friendly this Estonian program for opening remote companies? Any examples of companies that operate in Latvia but registered abroad? Well, actually, my boyfriend did that. So he's British. He used to have an Estonian company. He lived in Latvia, worked with Latvian companies, and it was very easy to open it. You can do it remotely. You get he did go to Estonian embassy, if I'm correct. I don't know obviously too much about it because I am living in Latvia and haven't done it too much. But I know a lot of companies who do that, and that is what Estonia is really pushing. They try to be startup nation and have everything online as much as possible, and try to be really friendly towards entrepreneurs. So I think there are some limitations, but in general, it is quite friendly. Is it usually required to have a company participate in these equity-free funding events? That is a good question. Well, wait, sorry. Yeah, there we go. I'm not entirely sure. In general, the ones I'm thinking about. So Horizon, so EU grants, when Imprimatur was doing that equity-free funding. And I would say so, because if you actually get money, it's sent to your business account, not your private account. And you would normally have a business account if you have a company. Yeah, I can't not see having a company, and I can't see that being an option. Maybe there's something, but normally, even if you look at startup conferences, when startups win some sort of money, then it's normally done to the company. And yeah, obviously, these organizations also don't want to send money to random accounts, whether business or private. So I would say so. Yeah. Okay. A lot of exclamation marks. So how about accounting and auditing and return submission after business registration, especially when you're starting waiting for investment? Not entirely sure what's about asked, whether there should be accounting and auditing. Is that what I should answer?
Once your business is registered and you have not yet started its operations and you're waiting for investment, and it's like 1, 2, 3 months have gone. So you still need to submit regular, returns of your business when you don't have a bank account and you don't have any operations in it.
So there is generally a time window. So you have to do annual. So almost every business, with exceptions, has to do an annual review. So basically, you submit your documents to the enterprise register and say how you did this year. You can do it yourself, but very much would suggest using an accountant. But that is done at specific windows in a year for your own company as well. And audit is not necessarily done for each company. That's done when something looks dodgy, when something doesn't look too well in your annual reviews, and they might decide, hey, we are going to audit this company and check if everything is okay here. So the short question to this, you can not have an accountant or worry about audits after registering your company straight away. If you're waiting for investment, it's very likely your investor will also require you to get an accountant, especially help with the P&Ls and all the statements, income statements and stuff. Yeah, but in general, yeah, you don't have to do it straight away. You can do it later in time, and if your investor allows, then not get an accountant straight away. And yeah, can we use Nordigen's banking account API in the mobile app for customer payment collection, salary disbursement, just like Bolt and Volt? If you mean using it as a Stripe or Paysera or other micro payment platforms, then no. Nordigen banking account API is not, we are not so-called PSPS, so payment services account provider, we are account information service provider. So what we deal with is access to data, data analysis. We have no money going through our APIs, or yeah, we don't have any money going through of that sort. So that is a no. If that's what you mean.
There is a final question currently in the chat as well. What was the accounting company that you recommended in Latvia? Also, another quick note. I don't know, previously when you were answering, I think you were doing something with your hands and thus touching the microphone. And there were, sorry, I had to mention that so that.
No.
It was only for a brief moment.
Okay. Yeah. So accounting company is called Accounting Latvia. I think it's accountinglatvia.lv. Yes, that is the one I worked with at, we worked with at Overkill. We also had, I've had many startups use it, and the youth organization that part of, we also use it. But yeah, there is obviously many out there. You can also find individual accountants that freelance for you. It's many different systems, but Accounting Latvia is the one we use. Okay. I think that's it for questions now. If you do have anything, so either send me an email or add me on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/in/Arta or arta@nordigen.com. Very happy to answer any of the questions you might have. And even if you don't have questions, add on LinkedIn. Hope to see your startup become a big thing very soon and have you in my context straight away. All right. Thanks, Rathod. I will accept your LinkedIn request. Okay. Yeah, I think I will send a presentation to Pauls. He will share the homework with you all over again. And if there's anything else I can help with, please let me know now.
Well, apart from, if you can, joining the pitch competition on the 25th to also evaluate the teams and the participants. But yeah, the main thing would be really to share the presentation, and yeah, they have a place where they can contact you, and I will share the homework as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll do that then. It's been a pleasure to answer your questions and telling you all about this. Yeah, keep in touch, and hopefully see you soon at pitching competition as well.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Art, for joining us here today, and for giving this definitely useful and necessary talk, because the information you shared with us, well, you can't really go about creating a company without following these steps, and they do help out. I guess we can all kind of figure these things out on our own, but it's a bit easier when it's handed over to you on a silver platter, as it was today. So I also believe that when I'll share the presentation, that the participants of How to Startup are going to download it and use the steps again and again and again. I know for a fact that I'm going to do it myself as well, because I am interested in that. So yeah, once more, definitely thank you for joining us and giving this lecture. And,
it's been a pleasure.
And of course, thank you to everybody who joined here today and joined our session. And as always, I will post the recording from the session in the resources channel on Slack, as well as the presentation. And of course, the homework will be posted. Answering your question, Albert, no, not yet, or not maybe ever, I don't know. But, still, these are really important things to note. But yeah, so returning, the homework is going to be posted in the homework channel as always. And regarding the previous homework, please send it in once you can, as soon as possible, of course. And as I mentioned, I have reviewed some of the pitch decks already, but I will send in the rest in the upcoming days. And regarding next week or our final session, because it is coming to that, we are going to focus a bit more on the team, on company culture, on sales, and even pivoting. And to help with this final step, we will have Crystal Krustuk, the co-founder, former CEO, and currently the Chief Testing Officer at Testlio, an end-to-end QA management platform and community of highly vetted testers that help businesses deliver amazing customer experiences. So that is something we can all look forward to regarding the next session. But once more, a huge thanks to Arta and a huge thanks to everybody who joined in today. So have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you.